Hello everyone, my name is Arav Soni and welcome back while we go over the path Microsoft Excel for data analysts. And today we're going to go over summarizing data in Microsoft Excel. This course is approximately 19 minutes long, so stay tuned. Alright, so first off we've got a sheet with 10 days of data starting with date, the close price, the volume, the open, the high and low. And this is for gold. Now we're going to see how to use the sum function on this data set.
And now the first thing I want to do here, I want to take the volume across those 10 days and I want to produce a total so I can know how much was traded over the 10-day period. Now to do this, inside of a cell down below the table, if you type the equal sign, you'll start up a formula. And then inside of this formula that you're editing, type out sum, which is a function. And then an opening parenthesis allows us to pass some numbers. For example, I could do sum of 1 and 2 with a comma in between, close the parenthesis, and then when I hit return here, the formula is evaluated and the value is 3. But instead of hard-coded numbers here, I want to pass the cells up above, and to do that, I'll edit the formula here. And in between the parentheses, I want to then come up above with my mouse and click, and then hold shift and click up on top here for the first day. So I've now clicked the last day, hold shift and click through the first day. That selects all 10 cells. When I hit return now, I get back the total. And if I want to verify that, I might want to format the cells here by selecting all of them and then come up here to the formatting and add in a comma. That also adds the decimal places. I want to get rid of those because volume is in whole units. So I'll come up here and use the right arrow with the .00, just hit this twice here to get rid of the decimals. And there you go. Now you can see that each of our days had about 150, 160,000. And if we have 10 days, then that makes about 1.6 million.
Now, if you want a faster way to get the sum of something, it's going to show you how to do it a little faster rather than using the equals to sum function.
If you'd like a faster way to produce a sum of numbers, you come up and click on this cell here right below the table, above the previous sum. If you click on that and then come up to the ribbon up above, there should be an auto sum button. If you just click that, it'll suggest the sum, the same one that we did. If I hit return now and accept that, you can see that evaluates the exact same value. So that's just a faster way to go about this so that you don't have to manually select the cells to include. Now, if you'd like to verify that the formula is the same, when you have one of the cells selected, if you look up in the formula bar, you can see this is sum of D2 to D11. Instead of memorizing that, if I use the arrow key to move down to the next cell, the one that we manually created, you can see the formula is exactly the same. So you can move between these two cells, and you can look at the formula bar to make sure nothing is changing. If you'd like to edit one of the formulas, like the one we typed in manually, select that cell, hit F2, and now you can modify the formula. For example, if you wanted to change the range, you could do that here with D10. That will drop off one of the days, and then that changes the value. And you can, of course, undo that change to bring it back to all 10 days. Another way you can use AutoSum, instead of selecting a cell below a column, you can select a cell to the right of some numbers. In this case, this won't make any sense, but we can click the button here to see how this works. You can see it selects all 5 of the numbers to the left here. Note it doesn't take the date because that's not a number. It then produces a sum over on the right, and of course this means nothing with this data set. And one more tip here, you can actually run AutoSum over multiple columns. Just select the cell after and hit AutoSum, and it'll produce the sum of each of the columns independently. Alright, so I'll undo that because that number is meaningless. These are prices up above, so if anything we might want to produce an average, which if you click the AutoSum button here, you can pick the average instead of a sum. Now when you do that, you can see it gives you an average price. Or if I undo that, up under AutoSum here, click on this, I can choose max, and there you go, it gives the maximum price for each of the columns. And if you look at the formula in this case, up in the formula bar, you can see we're using max now instead of the sum function.
Alright, so now we're going to go over how to use the count and count a function to get the average of something without using the average function.
In the second sum here, I'm going to delete this cell to clear it out. Just hit the delete key. And then inside of here, I'm going to use the equal sign to start a formula. I'll type in count, open parenthesis, And then to select the cells that I want to count, I can use the up arrow key and move up to the last date here. Now, hold down the shift key and hit the arrow key up again and do that until I get up to the top of the list. Once you're done, once you're satisfied with what you've selected here, if you hit return, that finishes out the formula. It gives me back the count. This is a count of numbers. So if I hit F2 here, you can see here's our formula. We've got a range of selected cells. And one of the unique things about the count function, it only counts numbers. Now keeping that in mind, if I come over here and modify the range, and instead of D2, I go up to D1, which is the very first row. Now you can see the word volume is also selected. When I hit return here, what do you think I'm going to get back for a count? Right, so when I hit enter here, you can see I still get back 10. So even though, hit F2 to edit that again, even though I've selected a cell with text in it, that's not counted because count only includes cells that have a number inside of them. This is a count of numbers. And just to be precise here, let's change this back to only select the cells that have numbers in them. Now when I fix that, I get back 10. So basically we have a sum here, so I can type total here. Maybe I want to right align that. Command R or Control R on Windows. And then down below that, I've got the count. So if I add these labels and right align that again, you can see now we have a total and we have a count, which means with those two numbers, we could do something like produce an average. And now I can make a new formula, equal sign, up arrow twice to get to the total, and then I'll divide that with the forward slash, and I can then select the count here. And now when I hit return, in this case, I get the average, which of course is 160,000. Now, one of the neat things about count and sum, if I come up to one of my trading days, let's just say that we're missing trading information. We have null or we have some sort of string to indicate there's nothing available for volume. When I hit return to make this change, what do you think is going to happen to the total, the count, and the average? All right, so hit return here, and you can see the total is updated here. It's about 1.4 million total. And I only count 9 days of trading data, and now the average is updated, and the average is pretty close to what it was previously. If I undo this here, you can see it's 160, and if I redo it, you can see it just drops down to 158. Now, if for some reason you want a count of everything, not just numbers, you can use count A. That's a new function. If you use an equal sign, count A here, and then come up above, if I select all of the volumes, including the null volume, now when I hit return, in this case, you can see I get a value of 10. So there's 10 days of data, but I only have numbers for 9 of those days.
Alright, so now we're going to use COUNTIF function and see how to use COUNTIF to make our lives a little easier while going over a huge, large data set.
This next example, I got rid of all of the calculations and I put the volume data back, got rid of the null value, because now I want to move on and talk about the pricing columns. And of course, we have the closing price for the day over here. I want to take a look, though, at the high price column because what I want to look for, I want to count up the number of days where the high price was above a threshold, for example, 2360. So to do that, in this case, I can't use count or count A. I have to use something else that's known as COUNTIF. So if I come over to the high price, these are the highs for the day. Down below, I can use equals, COUNTIF, that's the function, open parenthesis. First up, I need to pick the range just like before, so I can do that the same way. Click, shift, and click. And then I've got a second parameter I need to provide, so add a comma after the range. And then for this parameter, I need to specify criteria. And I do that with a string, so I'll use double quote here to open up a string. And then a greater than sign because I want to count any of these numbers that are over, and let's do 2360. Now, if I close this off with a double quote and then wrap up the whole thing with the ending parentheses, we have both of our arguments now, and if I hit return here, you can see I get back a count of 3. And then just as a reminder, I might want to put in a label here that this is a COUNTIF. So this means there are 3 numbers above 2360, and then the rest are below.
Alright, so the COUNTIF function was really helpful and really important, but now we're going to go over adding an adjustable threshold or a condition to the formula, and in this case the COUNTIF function.
Alright, now let's say that I want to change the threshold here. Of course I can hit F2 to edit the formula. I can then come over and click in here and change this to 50 and then run it, and then get back 4 this time. But what if I'd like an easier way to adjust that threshold? For example, what if I could just type a threshold in down below here? So I could type in 2350 here as my threshold, and then I can edit this cell and I'd like the count to update. So we'll need to pass this value in as our criteria. However, if I edit the formula here, you can see the criteria includes the greater than sign. So if I want to make this fully dynamic, I could call this criteria here, and then I could build up a string here with an equal sign, double quote to start it, first I need greater than, and then a double quote to end the string here, because I'm going to concatenate with it the ampersand here, and then refer to the value up above. That produces my criteria, and if I come up here and I modify my original formula and I take out the hard-coded criteria, replace it with the computed criteria here, when I hit return, you can see now I get a count if of 4. And so now I could modify my threshold. I could do 2360, for example, and that gives me 3 matches. Or I could do 2400 and I should have none. So now I have a dynamic criteria that is recomputed based on whatever I type into the threshold, and then that's passed to COUNTIF to automatically count that number of values. Right, so I'm going to change the threshold here back to 2360, because now I want to show you how you can verify what's being counted. If you select the cells with the high prices in them, if you come up to conditional formatting, underneath of highlight cell rules, choose greater than. Basically, we can highlight cells that are greater than a given value. There's a text box on the right here. Click into that, and then click the little button here with a red arrow. We'll collapse this input and allow you to focus on selecting a value. So we want to make sure that we select our threshold here. So basically, any of the high prices over our threshold will be marked. And in this case, if I hit return here and then choose OK, they'll be marked in red. And if you take a look at what matches here, you can see all the red cells, those are above 2360. And if I change this to 2340, for example, 9 things are marked now. You can see all the matches there. Maybe I go 2350, and there you go. You can see the 4 matches in that case. So conditional formatting is a nice way to be able to double check that your expression is working.
Alright, so that was summarizing data in Microsoft Excel. Hope you liked the video and got the most out of it. And stay tuned for next week while we go over more interesting stuff. Thank you so much for watching the video.